I spent 31 years in the ICU watching people fight to stay alive. I knew every medication, every warning sign, every number on every monitor. But at 64, kneeling in my own garden with my granddaughter Emma, I couldn't stand back up. She looked at me and asked, "Grandma, does it hurt to be old?" I was a nurse. I had kept strangers alive through the worst nights of their lives, and I couldn't get up off the ground in front of a 6-year-old. That was the moment I realized I had spent 3 decades taking care of everyone else, and I had completely forgotten to take care of myself. Not long after, the diagnoses came: osteoporosis, high blood pressure, chronic fatigue, 35 pounds I didn't recognize on a body I barely knew anymore. I started paying attention, really paying attention, the way I used to pay attention in the ICU, where details are the difference between what works and what doesn't. And one of the things I found surprised me more than almost anything else. It wasn't the obvious stuff. It wasn't the lack of exercise alone, or the stress, or the bad sleep. It was something sitting right on my kitchen counter, something I reached for every single morning, thinking I was doing myself a favor: fruit. Now let me be very clear before we go any further, because I'm a nurse and I don't deal in exaggeration. Fruit is not your enemy. Fruit is part of a healthy diet. I'm not here to scare you away from your apple, but after 60, the body processes things differently, and some fruit habits that felt completely harmless for decades can quietly work against your energy, your circulation, your leg strength, and your ability to feel good and move well throughout the day. Today I want to walk you through what I learned, not as a trend, not as a gimmick, as someone who spent her career reading bodies and who finally, in her 60s, started reading her own. Let me paint you a picture that I think will feel familiar. It's a weekday morning. You sleep okay, you have your breakfast, and you think, "Today I'll walk to the farmer's market." It's not far. You used to do it without thinking twice. But somewhere along the way, the legs start to feel it, that heaviness, that slow, dragging sensation that wasn't there 5 years ago. Maybe you find a bench. Maybe you sit down and think, "This is just what getting older feels like." I thought that too. For a while, I accepted it, and I'll tell you something that might be uncomfortable to hear. After 31 years in healthcare, I knew better than to accept a symptom without looking for its cause. But when it was my own body, I did exactly that. The truth is, aging does change things. Muscle function shifts. Circulation becomes more sensitive. The metabolism slows down. All of that is real. But not everything we chalk up to age is actually age. Some of it is the cumulative effect of habits we've never once questioned because they always seemed like the healthy choice. Heavy legs aren't always just a sign of getting older. Sometimes they're a sign that the body is working harder than it needs to in response to what we're feeding it. And that is good news, because habits can be changed. Before I walk you through the specific fruits and patterns I'd look at more carefully after 60, I want to explain the why. Because in my experience, when people understand the reason, they actually make the change. When they're just told what to do, they don't. There are 4 things happening in the body after 60 that make this conversation worth having. First, some fruits deliver sugar to the bloodstream too fast. Sweet fruit contains sugar that, when eaten alone without protein, fat, or adequate fiber, moves into the blood very quickly. Blood sugar rises. The body responds with insulin. Then it drops. And in that drop, you often feel fatigue, shakiness, and a hollow heaviness in the legs that you might be blaming on age. As a nurse, I watched blood sugar fluctuations affect patients in ways that looked like a dozen other problems. It's subtle, but it's real. Second, many fruits don't provide the foundation the body needs after 60. When we were younger, a banana or a handful of grapes as a snack was enough to carry us. After 60, the body needs more structure, more protein, more substance. When we eat mostly fruit, we feel okay briefly, but the base isn't there. And the legs notice that absence long before we consciously do. Third, circulation and fluid balance become more sensitive. After 60, the vascular system responds more sharply to fluctuations. Too much fructose at once can contribute to legs that feel swollen, heavy, or restless, especially by afternoon. I want to be precise here. This doesn't happen to everyone in the same way, but for many people, it is a real and overlooked pattern. Fourth, and most important, the context matters more than the fruit itself. This is the point I most want you to take with you today. Fruit is not the problem. The context is the variable. How much? What time of day? What form? Eaten with what else? After 60, the body doesn't need fast fuel or quick sweetness. It needs stability, a steady, reliable source of energy that the muscles, the heart, and the legs can actually count on. And that's where certain fruit habits begin to undermine the very strength you're trying to maintain. There are some fruits and some eating patterns I would look at more carefully after 60, not because they're forbidden, but because for many women especially, in certain amounts, at certain times, they cost more than they give. Pay attention to your own responses here. Your body has been giving you information for years. It's time to start taking notes. Grapes are one of the easiest foods to eat past any reasonable amount without realizing it. They're small, sweet, and there's no natural stopping point. One leads to another. Before long, a full bowl is gone. Grapes are high in fructose and provide almost no satiety. For older adults eating them as a light afternoon snack on their own, the result is often a quick energy lift, followed by a noticeable drop, and then that familiar weight in the legs that we write off as an afternoon slump. If you love grapes, keep them, but a small portion paired with something and eaten with intention. The banana is not the villain. It contains potassium, which supports muscle function, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But I see the same pattern come up constantly: banana and coffee, and that's breakfast. No protein, minimal fat, almost no fiber to slow the sugar absorption down. Blood sugar rises quickly. By mid-morning, energy drops. The legs feel slower. You reach for something sweet to compensate. The cycle repeats. If you want your banana, keep it, but build around it. Greek yogurt, a small handful of walnuts, a hard-boiled egg on the side. That completely changes what the body does with it. Pineapple has anti-inflammatory properties. That's real. But in large quantities, especially on an empty stomach, it can irritate the digestive lining in sensitive individuals. And when digestion is off, the whole body feels it. Energy drops, discomfort sets in, the legs feel heavier than they should. The same is true for highly acidic fruits in general. If you notice bloating, fatigue, or that unexplained heaviness after certain fruits, that's not a coincidence. That's useful data. Don't ignore it. I love watermelon in the summer. I'm not giving it up. But let's be honest about what it offers. Mostly water, very little fiber, no protein, no fat. You feel refreshed for a short window, and then you're empty again, hungry, tired, and reaching for the next thing. What concerns me more is that very large amounts of watermelon can dilute the electrolytes your muscles depend on: magnesium, potassium, the minerals that prevent cramping, support heart rhythm, and keep the legs working properly. Enjoy watermelon, but watch the portion and balance it with something more substantial. Dried fruit is one of the sneakiest sources of concentrated sugar in what most people consider a healthy diet. Raisins, dates, dried mango, dried apricots. They look small and harmless, but a modest handful of raisins contains more sugar than a full can of soda. A few dates can carry the glycemic load of a dessert. When people eat dried fruit freely as a healthy snack, they're delivering a large, fast dose of sugar to a system that, after 60, is already working harder to manage blood sugar fluctuations. If you like dried fruit, keep a very small portion, and always pair it with protein or fat to slow the impact. On juice, I'll be direct, even fresh squeezed. A glass of orange juice sounds like a wholesome start to the day, but what's been removed? The fiber. Everything that, in the whole fruit, would slow the sugar's entry into the bloodstream and give the body time to respond appropriately. Without that buffer, you get a sharp spike, an insulin response, and then a drop that leaves you standing in the kitchen wondering why you're already tired at 9 in the morning. Eat the fruit, the whole fruit, with the skin when possible. It is a fundamentally different experience for the body than drinking its sugar without the structure around it. And finally, canned fruit, peaches in syrup, fruit cocktail, pineapple rings in juice. I understand the appeal. They're soft, easy to eat, and familiar. For a lot of older adults, they're a long-time comfort food. But processing strips the fruit of enzymes, vitamins, and texture. What remains typically sits in concentrated sugar or syrup that enters the bloodstream fast and without resistance. Used occasionally, that's not a crisis. But as a daily staple for someone working to rebuild strength and mobility after 60, it's not a foundation you can build on. Not everyone responds to these things identically, but if you're regularly feeling heavier, more fatigued, or more swollen in the legs after certain fruits, that connection is worth taking seriously. Now let me tell you what actually helps. What I changed in my own life and what I've seen make a real difference for women in their 60s who come to me looking for a place to start. This isn't about restriction, it's about adjustment. The single most effective shift: don't eat fruit alone. An apple with a spoonful of almond butter, berries with plain Greek yogurt, a banana with a small handful of walnuts, a pear with a few pumpkin seeds. When fruit is paired with protein or healthy fat, sugar absorption slows down. The body receives energy in a gradual, controlled way. That is exactly what aging muscles and an aging cardiovascular system need. Not a spike, a steady signal. Watch your timing. Fruit alone on an empty stomach first thing in the morning isn't ideal for many women over 60. The body is coming out of a fasted state, and a rapid sugar hit early can throw the whole day's energy off balance. Better, fruit alongside a meal, or as part of a small balanced snack later in the morning. Late at night is also worth reconsidering. When the body is preparing for rest, it doesn't need fast fuel. It needs calm. Eat fruit more deliberately and less automatically. Many of us reach into the fruit bowl out of habit while doing something else entirely. We grab a handful of raisins because they're sitting there. We eat a bowl of grapes in front of the television without noticing. Start paying attention. Smaller portions, slower pace, more awareness. Then notice honestly, how do you feel 2 hours later? Stronger and more stable, or heavier and more tired? Your body has been trying to tell you things for years. This is just learning to listen. Build a stable nutritional foundation first. After 60, the single most important thing isn't finding the right superfood. It's creating metabolic stability. Protein at every meal, adequate hydration, consistent mineral intake, simple, dependable meals that the body can rely on day after day. When that foundation is solid, fruit fits naturally into the picture. Grapes are a pleasure again. Watermelon is refreshing without consequence. The fruit finds its right place inside a structure that's strong enough to support it. And observe your symptoms honestly. When the legs feel heavy, ask yourself, what did I eat in the past few hours? Was it mostly fruit? Was it fruit alone? Was it a large quantity? Other patterns worth watching: legs that swell slightly by late afternoon, sudden drowsiness after eating, hunger returning too quickly after a meal, a shakiness or restlessness that you've been attributing to something else. These are not emergencies, they are information. And information in my profession is everything. It's not about being afraid of fruit. It's about finally paying the same attention to your own body that you've spent a lifetime paying to everyone else's. If your legs feel heavy, maybe they're not just telling you that you're getting older. Maybe they're telling you that the body needs something different than what it's been getting. Not harder, not more complicated, just more deliberate. You don't have to eliminate anything, you just have to start listening. I spent 31 years keeping other people alive, watching their numbers, reading their signals, making small adjustments that made enormous differences. I was very good at that, and I completely failed to do it for myself. At 64, kneeling in the dirt in my own garden, unable to stand up in front of my granddaughter, I finally understood what I had been missing. Your body speaks to you every single day, through energy, through heaviness, through recovery, through the way you feel 2 hours after a meal. Those signals are not complaints, they are data. And it is never too late to start responding to them. I started at 64. I am stronger at 68 than I was at 58. Not because I found something magical, but because I stopped ignoring what my body had been trying to say. You deserve that same attention. You have spent enough years taking care of everyone else. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next one.